Welcome to this round table at Foire Papier. We have three nice guests today that are all of them in charge or were or are in charge of corporate collections. I will start by asking them just to introduce themselves.
Bonjour. Is the mic?
It's in English.
Okay. Bonjour. Hello. My name is Alden Hadwin, and I am leading the corporate collection for AMIA. AMIA, if you don't recognize the name, is a company that grew out of Aeroplan and is now an international, it's a global company with 30 offices in 20 countries. And we have just opened an office tower at Square Victoria.
I think we have to no not
Further away?
no closer actually.
Closer. And my role is to be director of corporate, well, I am director of community engagement on behalf of our corporation. And to engage with the arts community is partly expressed by our corporate collection of artworks.
Thank you. You just have to hold
Hi,
it close.
everybody. My name is Judy Strapp. I work for Clara Jenk. I'm the curator of the...
Sorry, Anne, just wait a second. Est-ce qu'on peut monter la puissance des micros parce qu'on est obligé de les mettre dans notre bouche? Ça serait mieux si on pouvait les tenir à peu près à cette distance-là. Hein, comme un cornet de crème glacée. Oui, c'est beau? OK. Like this is better. It's pretty heavy, huh? It's really heavy. So you're like, OK. Sorry.
Hi.
Hello. Okay. Judy Strapp. It's better. Thank you.
So in case anybody didn't hear, my name is Judy Strapp, and I work for Clara Jenk, and I'm the curator of the Claridge Collection. The company is in Montreal. We are a smallish private investment firm, and we have a contemporary collection of Canadian works of art by emerging and established artists.
Good.
Hello, my name is Tom Bjarnason. I'm a retired lawyer, but I had a long association with McCarthy Tétrault and spent a couple of decades working to develop a collection. I kind of stumbled into this. I was recruited to chair a committee, and I didn't know very much. In fact, I knew practically nothing about art and collecting. But over those 2 decades, and with the advice of a terrific consultant, whom I'll discuss later, it was a great learning curve, and it was a very enriching experience. Thank you.
So that I just want to clarify some points. So McCarthy Tétrault in Toronto.
In Toronto,
I believe
yes.
you have offices all around Canada.
Yes, we do.
And one in Montreal.
There is, and there's a good collection in most of our offices, with an emphasis in collecting in one place or another one office or another from time to time.
Okay. And Judy, just to put one aspect, how long have you been working for Claridge? How long have you been involved in the collecting? Just give the microphone.
Oh,
yes.
1,000 years. No, probably over 20 years, I guess, which is very usual for the staff. We're a very dedicated team that have been with the Brofmans for a very long time.
Okay, I'll ask you to talk about that aspect later on, because in your case there was a first collection and then a new one. So that's interesting. You had the chance to be there along this whole process.
Yes, I've seen. I used to work for Franklin Silverstone, who was the curator of the previous collection, under Charles Brofman, who used to. He used to be Claridge and run Claridge until his son took over, Stephen Brofman. I was his assistant curator. So I've been at Claridge for a very long time, and I've seen the transition from the previous collection to this collection, which has been mostly updated with works that were more in line with Stephen's tastes and more contemporary.
Okay, because I want you to know what is the path, the professional experience of our speakers, and it's true that they all did it for a long time, so they're really informed about what they're doing. What we're going to do now is they each will have more time to present the corporate collection that they know the best, the ones they're working for. They'll about have 10 minutes each, and then we'll go on with more precise questions. There's a variety of ways of different mandates that corporations can have, different ways of managing art collections, and you'll notice the variety through our panel today. Let's start with Alden. Would you like to start?
Yes, and
You'll have the chance also through the presentation to have a look at some of images, pictures that were taken in the offices that we're talking about.
yes, and I would also like to say that I've been doing this for 18 years, but in different forms. We created a photography prize working with the AGO in Toronto, and I've been very implicated in that. Purchasing and displaying artwork in our offices is a recent endeavor. And today I'm going to talk about a collection which has been put together this very winter between December and April. Because it's here in Montreal, we wanted to accentuate Quebec works. So we have an 80% ratio of works which come from Quebec artists. And the collection is divided into two parts. One half is purchased artwork. The other half is leased artwork through the Musée National des Beaux-Arts in Quebec. They have a fabulous program where they lease artwork that they have purchased from Quebec artists. And so we took advantage of that. On the screen, I'm going to quickly go through some images just to give you a flavor. I'm not going to talk about each artist, but I'm going to tell you that what we wanted to do in this very modern space was introduce natural forms, organic, textural, colorful works that would offset the glass and steel and the total whiteness of the environment, which could otherwise be very sterile. So bringing it to life with art. And this work by Marie-Claire Blais is the only one I'm going to describe in detail because I think it represents what we've been trying to do. She actually worked with images of the galaxies, a star nebula, and with dry pigment she brought out an image which is a very cerebral image. To me it looks like it could be a Michelangelo or a Da Vinci. It's wonderful. And at the same time, it's connected to a very natural image. And so this is in our reception area. We're very proud to have a number of her works. This is a very colorful work by Jean-Pierre Lafrance, and it's in our public reception area on the ground floor. Here, the colors are a little bit bright on the screen, but it's a very peaceful ensemble. We've mixed sculpture with painting, and the one in the top left corner is a Pierre Dorion. We're very proud to have it. And anyway, this is a nice marriage of natural colors and forms. Next slide. This is a beautiful sculpture by a young woman from the Eastern Townships called Patricia Barrowman. It's a bronze sculpture. Next slide. Here is an example of a marriage of colors that bring a harmony to the offices, which, as I said, are very white. And we have long, tall windows, so they're very bright. And these kinds of works help to center your gaze and your imagination, we hope. There's Marie-Claire Blais, and okay, here's another grouping. It doesn't matter, we can move on. Another grouping, and you get an impression of some sculpture, some pen and ink, some painting. Next one. Here is a beautiful example of a landscape, and one of the rare images which actually has people in it. but they go well together, and the colors are harmonious, so that in the 4 floors, you have this sense of sensuality, organic, natural warmth, and at the same time, punctual moments of appreciating what an artist can do. Next slide. These sculptures are truly wonderful. They're done by a gentleman who lives in the Laurentians, who works with rocks he collects around where he lives. And they are both owls. They're very fine. We have a young owl and an old owl. Next slide. This is an important picture because this is our employee committee. We decided that for the least artworks, and remember that's half of the installation, we would form a committee of employees. They had to write a 500-word essay about why they should be on the committee. And once they were on the committee, we worked with them to choose the least artworks, and they were also allowed each to place their favorite artwork from their selection near where they sit. And this gave them a sense of ownership. Next slide. Not important, this is a day of installation. You're all familiar with it. Next slide. This is really fun. Our employees chose a work by BGL, very well-known Quebec group of artists. And as you know, they've been chosen to represent Canada in Venice. So this work is a 1997 installation piece, and it's already a landmark in our offices. People say, if you want to find my office, go to the stove and turn left, which is kind of fun. And I wanted it to be fun, this installation. Next slide. This is Cynthia Girard, and I love her work. She's represented by Parisian Laundry, but this work came through the collection at the Musée. Next slide. And this is a wonderful work by an artist whose name is Warsnip. I believe his first name is Alexander. It's a 2009 acrylic on toile. It's in our main boardroom, and it has just a wonderful sweep of natural shapes and perhaps little planets. Anyway, it's a work we're very proud to display. And that's it. Just to give you a quick flavor, a quick overview of how we've approached this installation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alden. If you have the chance one day to go to the site, to the new AMIA building, it's on the corner of Beaver Hall and de la Gauchetière. They really have a lot of open spaces, and we've discussed this challenge of having to work with the specific city views and the interior, like the inside working spaces. Thank you. Judy, could you speak a little bit more about your own brand new collection at Claridge? And Anne will browse through the pictures.
Right. No, I think I can see it from over here. Well, this is Carl Funk, and we have 3 of Carl Funk's works. 2 are in the collection, the corporate collection, but Stephen Brofman just recently acquired another one from Gallery Division that they have a show on now. It's a very unusual one. It's 2 small Tupperware. Oh, you want to flip back to the Carl Funk for a sec? Okay. So this is also a unique Carl Funk. Carl came to visit our collection and said that the yellow hoodie, this parka, was probably going to be just a one of, that he found yellow to be a very difficult color to manipulate. And if any of you are familiar with Carl Funk, most of his works are blue hoodies and side profiles. But we find his work extremely interesting. He has this ability to, can you hear me? Yeah? He has this ability to create these aloof feelings and of strangers. His portraiture is very interesting. And yet you feel that you're invading someone's personal space when you're looking at his works. And they're very interesting from close and from far. We bought this in... this came from the States because Carl Funk happens to be one of those Canadian artists that is now represented at Gallery 303. I could go on about Carl Funk, but okay,
no,
go
that's,
ahead.
that's what I was going to say. You can tell both Alden and Judy are used to do tours, corporate tours of their collection. So they're spending time to explain each of the pieces. But for this roundtable,
probably don't wanna hear it.
It's great. But if we want to have time to discuss about
Okay, well, this
corporate
one I will
collection,
talk about. This is Valerie Blas. This was a commission, and we waited quite a long time for this work. So it's probably the first time that anybody's really seeing this work. It hasn't been titled yet, but it is referencing her photographs that she did recently of her Papier series of black dressed figures highlighting studio objects. In this case, we commissioned her to do this piece for the niche. So that's just a view of, we threw in a few views of our office so that people could understand. Because I mean, this is what Tina and I, Tina's my assistant, shout out to Tina. This is what we do every day is in managing a corporate collection. Especially when it's new, because even though we had a collection, we now have a new collection. But when you display works of art and when new works come in, we might have to do a shift or rotate because we want to make sure our primary focus is to make sure the works look really good, mostly for the artists. We'd like to make sure their artists are happy with their display. And of course the staff. And of course our boss. Well, Nicolas Papier, this is a work that in fact, the three of us, Stephen Brofman, Tina and I went over to the museum to see the major installation that's 2 stories high. And Stephen picked a few mirrors and we recreated a composition. And so we worked directly with the artists on that one. Sometimes we work with the artists, like the 2 previous ones, Valerie Blas and this one, and sometimes we go through the dealers. Scott McFarland, he's leaving on Monday for the AGO show. So we're going to miss it. But we bought another Scott McFarland to go in his place. Not just for that reason, because we're big fans of Scott McFarland. Isabelle Ayer, this is a large photograph that hangs in our reception. And it's this hauntingly beautiful, spooky environmental work. I'm trying to be short now. We can go. Oh yeah, okay, Sasha Pierce. Sasha Pierce is an artist that's represented by Jessica Bradley in Toronto, and we're a little addicted to Sasha Pierce because we started with 1 and now we have 4. She's an artist that uses paint in a very unconventional way. She fills little sandwich bags, pricks the end, lines her canvases, and creates these really interesting sort of mathematical op art illusions. And it's the sides that reveal the process, but I chose this work because she happens to be one of Stephen's favorite artists in the collection. He has 2 of hers in his office. That's Laurent Crass. Yes, it's a machete. We glued it down because we have a few of Laurent Crass' works. It's a porcelain piece. And it ties into, this piece was chosen to show you guys because it ties into our commitment to continuing on with other mediums. The previous Claridge collection was very strong in the crafts, probably due to the history of the Sadie Brofman Awards. And we're going to continue on with that program. We're just, picking more contemporary works. And a lot of the artists that are working in different mediums, Laurent Crass being one of them in ceramics, are dealing with issues that are very contemporary and dealing with the manipulation of their material in interesting ways. That's our David Altmed head. We were really pleased to get that, and that was thanks to Parisian Laundry, who actually had a show on Cynthia Girard had a major show on, and she is very good friends with David Altmed, and she asked him if he would mind contributing. And so Jeannie fortunately told us because she knew we were big fans, and we acquired it. And that was, now we'll talk about corporate collections. This was a really difficult work at the beginning to get the staff to be excited about. It was a little bit of a hard sell to the staff. His works are very challenging. They're sensual, they're grotesque, they're serene, they're about decay, they're about growth. You can get lost in the details, and this happens to be an upside-down head and with a unicorn's nose.
Almost creepy sometimes.
Yeah, very creepy. We're actually, as I said, we're big fans, and we're looking for another David Altmed, but he usually creates these very gigantic giants or these spectacular worlds within acrylic boxes, and we always have problems with space. We have space constraints, so we're on a hit list, and David knows that we're waiting for him to come up with something for us. This is actually, although in the reception when you walk in on the 7th, it's not on the main reception, it's the door that we all use. So it's in a very prominent position. It's next to a Sarah Ann Johnson Arctic series.
Let me know, Judy, are the employees at Claridge involved in a way in the purchasing of the works of art? Not in your case, I believe.
We don't have an acquisition committee.
Not yet. You could answer. Or...
I'm looking at Nancy Rosenfeld.
No, but that's
Nancy
an interesting...
often very much, she's very involved in the arts, obviously due to the seminars and her fellowship at the foundation. And so we do include the staff. If I could tell a funny story. The first 2 acquisitions we made were as well. One was a BGL. It was one of the signs with the dead flies. And another one was a very large Kim Dorland. And Stephen and I knew that we were going to shake things up, and we were a little concerned. But we felt good about the decisions, and we felt good that this was the way to introduce the staff to a very new collection. And they came in, and I've never heard so many vocal commentaries that just seemed to come out all at once. They were, I mean, let's be honest, they weren't in love with the works. And over time, with baby steps, they started to appreciate the collection, and they started to get excited about the fact that, wow, this is all what's going on. This is hip. This is representing culture today. This is representing what's going on across Canada, because the Claridge collection, our mandate is to buy works from across Canada. And they started going to museums themselves and realized that a lot of the works that we had were in the museums. And now, I'm really pleased to say, and Tina can attest to this, that when a new work comes in, the entire staff runs to the crate and waits to see what's coming out of the crate, or waits to see what's being uncrated. And they are absolutely involved, and they feel it's their collection. It is their collection. It was one of the reasons why the collection, what was decided upon was that, we've always had a collection. The Brofmans have always collected art. They are big supporters of art and Canadian art. One of the major reasons why they collect art is because he personally wants to live and work in an art-filled environment. But another thing is that art humanizes an office. It promotes, creativity and individual thought, and we wanted to continue on with that.
We'll discuss about that later, but that's an interesting point. Maybe we can, is that the last picture? We can browse.
Sorry.
Ed Peen.
Ed Peen, we have 2 Ed Peens.
Is there another one? Yeah, we can just quickly browse through the pictures.
That's down the hall. That is the Kim Dorland that I told you the staff almost killed us over. That's a Simon Hughes, and that's the positioning of the new Valerie Blass that we are very pleased about. That's a Michel de Bois on the table.
In the niche.
That's a Jeremy Hoff in the back. Yes, in the niche is the Valerie Blass.
And there's a Michel de Bois on the table.
Yes. Patrick Couture, Nicolas Bayer, and at the end of the boardroom is the other Nicolas Bayer.
And we see another Laurent Craste,
Yes, Laurent Craste.
with the baseball bat. And one day, Stephen Bronfman actually took the baseball bat out of the sculpture. It's a family thing with baseball. Now it's glued.
Yeah.
Thank you. Tom.
So this is a random selection of images. People ask how many works we have in the Toronto office, and I frankly don't know, but I think it would be in the neighborhood of 300. I've chosen works that were acquired while I was actively involved in the collection, so there's no work from the 21st century on view here. I started off with on a slight bilingual note, because we have a self-portrait by Greg Curnow, one in English, and opposite in an enclave, a French version, a much more colorful version on the same topic. I want to step back for a moment and talk about corporate collecting generally, and I think that any wisdom that I now have today is very much in hindsight. But I think that there are three things to think about. One is the priority that the corporation or the partnership is giving to the art collection. When I was asked to chair the committee, I said I would do it on two conditions. You know, at that point, I didn't know anything. I said, first, I want to be able to engage an advisor. And secondly, I want to know that the firm is committed on a reasonably long basis to growing the collection. The impetus was we had remodeled our offices, the landlord gave us an allowance, and there was some money left at the end. So the geniuses decided we could collect art. And that priority, I think, was very important. People realized that we were in this for the long term, that, as Judy has said, you stumble along the way in terms of your relationship with your constituents. But eventually, we experienced a real sense of pride in what we were doing. The next area is decision making. And we have a committee. The committee is composed of partners who, unlike a corporation, I think partners feel a little more of a financial commitment to the process of collecting. The committee is also very useful because it acts as a way of legitimatizing the choices that we've made.
Sorry, would you say that's one of the reasons why a lot of lawyers' office have corporate collections?
Yes, I think that's probably the case. Lawyers, more than any other profession, seem to be interested in art. I've never been able to understand that, but I'm happy that that's the case. And the third thing is presentation. And we learned along the way that we had to explain, to some extent, each acquisition as it arrived. And the solution we came up with was to have our advisor write about a 200-word explanation of each piece, a short description of the artist and his or her practice, and then a bit of analysis of the work in question. Presentation also involves an external audience, and this was important for the firm because a large part of that are the firm's of clients who visit the firm and have opinions about what they see. So we had to be prepared to defend to them our choices. We also felt a responsibility to the community in terms of inviting museum groups and other art-oriented organizations to tour the collection. Those usually take place in the evening. I mentioned our advisor, and that's probably the most important part of this collection, a woman by the name of Jeannie Parkin, who was at the fair for a couple of days, but unfortunately isn't here today. Jeannie was terrific. She understood human nature, and she was very good at shaping how works were presented to the firm. On top of that, she has a wonderful eye. So let's go through a few more of the pieces. We have a number of Vancouver artists who work in photography. The one who isn't depicted here, and I'm sorry, is Ian Wallace, who's kind of the not grandfather, but he's the senior citizen in terms of the Vancouver School. So the people who are, you can see here, are Roy Arden, whose silhouette is visible at the foot of this piece. It's not a very good image, I apologize, but it's a housing development in suburban Vancouver. Next. This is a huge work by Stan Douglas called, let me get it right, Every Building on West Hastings, an area of Vancouver that was and may still be very down at the heels. Also an important area in Vancouver for art because it had a number of artists, including Jeff Wall and Stan Douglas, had their studios in one or other of the buildings. So this piece, I didn't really take into account the scale of the piece, and when we came to move it from New York, where Stan's dealer was, to the firm, we realized we didn't have a plan to get it up to the 47th floor. So the staff were terrific. They made a mock-up of the piece by scale and figured out a way to bring it to the 47th floor, including taking it up on the roof of the elevator cab to the 50th floor, and then in a very intricate pattern down to where it now is located, and I doubt that it will ever move again. Next, please. We don't have many paintings in the collection. This is a work by the late Gerald Ferguson entitled 200 Feet of Hose. And he literally dipped hose in enamel and applied it to the canvas to create this form. Next. This is a piece by Robert Phones, a well-known Toronto artist, in which he made objects that represent letters when they spin. So perhaps you can read, I'll give you a start. We have fat, flat, and tall. A law firm is a very serious place, and when we can introduce a light note or even humor, which is sometimes difficult to achieve in art, we try to do so. I guess, next please. I guess the next piece is less than humorous. General idea towards the very end of their practice, did a series of paintings called Infected Mondrian. These are exact replicas of Mondrian paintings, with one exception, where Mondrian had used the color yellow, they substituted green, which was a symbol of the AIDS virus. And shortly after that, 2 of the 3 members passed away from that disease.
No, but also Mondrian hated green, the color green.
Exactly. He abhorred the color, abhorred it.
He never used green, and I've read that he would bring flowers to his studio, like tulips, red,
Yes.
yellow. He would cut
The stems?
the stems and put a wire instead.
I think there was a story about his aversion to landscapes too. When he traveled by train, he kept the blind down. So this is, I wish I had the complete version of this piece, but it's an earlier work by General Idea consisting of 3 images of the grounds of a museum outside or in Zurich. And in the background, and I'm afraid you can't see this, one of the members is seated with a toy life-size poodle beside him. And the poodle figured very largely in General Idea's practice. But at this point, with the onset of AIDS, the poodle was retreating at a more sober time was upon them and us. Next, please. Rodney Graham, another member of the Vancouver School with a signature inverted tree. This one is called Tree with Bench, the bench not being quite so prominent. Next. This is a fairly modest piece, but I think quite brilliant. It's called Time and Space by Janice Gurney. And I chose it because it's installed opposite what I hope is the next piece by, can you go one more forward? Here's another piece that addresses the issue of time. Here, 1 minute of my time, a drawing by Mike Alexier, whose work is in the Robert Birch booth, if you have a chance to look. And this is literally an exact minute in which this drawing was created. Next.
Mika was right there.
Oh, he is. Oh, was. Okay. So this is a piece that caused a great deal of controversy to our surprise. It's by Ken Lum, and it's obviously entitled, I Can't Believe I'm in Paris. The reaction of members of the firm who were non-Caucasian was immediate and quite severe. They thought the piece stereotypified black women and that it was degrading. It was an interesting exercise to bring them on side and a really useful one to tell them about Ken Lum, his background as a Chinese Canadian, and about his practice. And by the time that conversation had been completed, the objectors were, I think, really fans of the piece and could see the joy that it brings.
There's a similar piece by Ken Lum at the Banque Nationale here in Montreal, and Joan Kane also explained to us how hard it was to have it there, but it's in the employees' open space, and she's really happy about the outcome.
As I say, I was very surprised by the reaction, but I guess I was perhaps not being as sensitive as I ought to have been. The other thing is sometimes when work is installed, the people in the area say, "You're not leaving that here, are you?" And then if the piece goes, years later, the piece might be rotated or go out on loan, and the exact opposite reaction. That's our piece. You can't remove that. Is there anything left? I can't remember. An object by Ewan MacDonald. Objects that we find difficult to collect because it's a private office. There are lots of, it's public in a way, and things can disappear. Yeah, Susan Shell, a Toronto artist. This is a feminist work from the, I don't have the date, but it's from the late 80s. She took a very domestic object, a Hudson Bay blanket, very obviously, and what you can't see is that she embroidered in the center of the blanket the names, the names of all the public galleries in which her work had been exhibited. It says a lot. Next? Or is that okay, very quickly, two more works by the Vancouver artist Ron Tereda. Very ironic. Could we have the next one, please? And I think that's it. Oh no, Rennie Van Helm. Our offices are in the Toronto Dominion Bank Tower, which was the single building that Mies van der Rohe designed in the Toronto Dominion Centre complex. This piece is called Architect's Cabinet, and it's a riff on Miesian design. And also a comment, I think it's the Farnsworth House in outside Chicago. I'm going to leave it at that. Is that the last? No, there's one more. Oh, two more, right. So I never liked the idea of finding work that related to the practice of law.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
I was wondering, I was thinking corporate collection, if you would be at IBM or, I don't know, would you buy something like that?
Exactly. Yeah. So here's a comment on the practice of law and justice by Kala Witten. And last, another object, a small sculpture by Kevin Yates called appropriately Garbage. That's it.
Thank you very much. Wow, we've been through three somehow really different corporate collections. So it shows you the variety of settings, of also different ways of managing corporate collection. And also what I've noticed is different ways of thinking about the relationship with the employees or the partners, or like even the names are different. Community, outreach, but I would like people in the audience, if they have specific questions or general questions that could be asked to the three panelists, because time flies, that would be great. There's so many topics we could cover about corporate collection. There's the definition of art, what kind of art you collect. We discussed about more maybe conceptual or contemporary art, recent acquisitions by even commissioned works of art, but also this idea of loaning arts from museums. Like we often hear the fact that museum vaults are full of amazing works of art, and if these works of art can be shown in public spaces or even private working spaces, that would be great, mostly for artists and also for the general public. Do you have questions? Yes.
Hi, I'm a working artist. My name is Eva Zabrowski. I live in Montreal. But my question is, what importance do you give to the work of emerging artists in your collections?
We can do it one at a time.
I'm very glad you asked that question about how does the work of emerging artists play a role in a corporate collection. In AMIA's collection, it plays an important role. On every floor, we have some work which is done by an emerging artist. And actually, as we become more involved in the arts community around us, I hope to encourage a rotation of works to be displayed by emerging artists. I think it's educational for the employees to see what kind of work is happening out there right now. And I think we can be helpful to those artists by introducing them to how does the corporate environment work? What are our expectations? What are our criteria? Even simple things like delivery, these physical matters. How do you get the painting to where it needs to be? And does it fit the dimensions? And does it have the hooks to install it? These are all things which come into play. Great question.
Well, we started off with the intention of just having emerging artists within our smaller offices within the giant office. We do look for a lot of emerging artists, but I'm going to be honest, we mostly go through the dealers. We have a lot of faith in the dealers. We trust them. They are the expert on what's going on in the art scene. They're the experts on their own artists. And we generally go by their recommendations. We don't necessarily buy exactly what they are telling us to buy, but I get this asked a lot. I get phone calls a lot from artists that just call up and say, could you take a look at my works? But unfortunately, if we were doing that, then I wouldn't be able to have time to do anything else. And I believe in the system. I happen to believe in this system. I happen to believe in what these guys are doing. It's an old way of selling art, and I think it's a way it's going to continue. So yes, probably a quarter to hopefully half of our works are by emerging artists, and then we have a Rodney Graham, we have Ian Wallace, we have the established artists as well, and I hope that we're going to continue with that, and that's for my boss's private collection as well.
Like Judy, we believe in the gallery system, and artists, all the artists that we've acquired have had representation. When the collection started, somebody in the firm used the word investment, and I was quick to tell them that they shouldn't consider this exercise to be one of profit or in dealing in commodities. I'm straying away from your question, I realize. We like to see a couple of years of an artist's practice before we make a commitment. Sometimes that's not the right decision. It turns out that the artist's earliest work was amongst the best, but we're pretty conservative, I guess, or we're conservative about our choices.
Another question, the last one. It's almost one. We started a little bit late, but we have to finish on time.
Hi, I'm a owner of a Viva Vida Art Gallery just on the West Island of Montreal. And my question for a corporate collection is, how much weight is given to the individual piece that you're looking to purchase versus the collection as a whole in terms of purchasing? In other words, are you looking to curate the space when you purchase different pieces, or do you go by individual piece?
Really interesting question, indeed. Do you want to start?
Sure. Well, G.D. Parkin's mantra was, buy what is typical and buy what is best. So those two considerations come into play. I can't think of any better way of describing that. I guess in terms of curation, I think other people might see that there's an overview, but when you're so closely involved, and I'm not a professional, I didn't see the relationship as clearly as might be the case.
That is a really good question. I can only speak for me personally, but we look at the works individually, but we always have to take the collection into consideration, and especially when it comes to space constraints, and especially when it comes to if we feel that we're very strong in one area and we're weak in another. We're a little weak right now in painting. we're a little weak on collecting from, the Maritimes from out of the east. We're very strong. There's a lot of the criteria that we keep in mind when we're looking at work. So it's really a combination of both.
I think a wonderful work of art sometimes has such a strong voice that one responds to it and makes a space for it. But at the same time, a corporate collection needs to have a vision that it's following. And the idea of a certain theme or style which seems to suit the collection is not a bad thing. But I believe that each work of art is individual and that one must first and foremost respond to what it says and then make the decision, do we have a place for it or do we create a new place for it if we really love it?
Any more questions? These are great questions. I'm sure you would have much more. I maybe have a last question. It's you somehow read my thoughts when you mentioned this aspect of the more financial or economical aspect of corporate collection. We hear a lot about this aspect of related to investment. So I would like to maybe have your thoughts on that. I think a lot of people have this false impression that corporate collections invest, like buy art, like a financial investment. I'm really happy that you all spoke about totally different topics about the love of art and how you can share that and the criteria that are involved in the buying of works of art. But just maybe a last thought about that aspect.
We do not consider our art collection or the installation with any consideration about is this an investment. But we do take seriously the responsibility. We know that if we include an artwork in our corporate collection, that this has meaning for the artist, that it can make quite a difference to other people purchasing that artist's work. And so we choose with care and we take the mantle of responsibility very seriously. But for us, it is the pleasure of working within a space which has artwork, the inspiration it brings, and hopefully the great illumination that comes from whatever has inspired these artists.
Well, ditto. But I am going to say something, because I'm going to be truthful here. When you get up to a certain price point, we're all trying to buy intelligently. But when you get up to a certain price point, you want to buy smartly and intelligently, and you hope that you're going to at least get your money back down the road. That is not the reason or the motive as to why we have a collection or why we buy art, but when you get up to a price point, it's very difficult not to keep that in mind.
I couldn't agree more with these last two answers. Contemporary art is risky. We have no idea what the aesthetic is going to be 10 years or 50 years from now and how relevant our choices have been. So you collect, you hope intelligently and cross your fingers.
Good. I like these last words because it opens up also the debate to all the private collectors that might be part of this panel. And Judy also mentioned the fair and this everything happening around us. We could hear the the activity around us. That's really nice. I would like to thank you all. Alden from AMIA, thank you. Judy from Claridge and Tom from McCarthy Tétrault. Thank you all. So I think the last panel is coming up later on. Have a nice fair at Papier. Alors, merci beaucoup. C'est la fin de cette table ronde. S'il y a des gens qui aimeraient avoir des informations en français, je vais rester pour quelques minutes. Je remercie nos panélistes. Merci.